Good morning and welcome back to Commercial Radio. So today we're doing lesson 22, which is around commission and sales and programming. But before we get into that, let's delve into what we looked at in the previous lesson. We looked at RAMs and how important RAMs are, so radio audio measurement in terms of our listenership figures, okay, because that is how we measure our listenership figures, and from there we use that data to take to potential clients or to take to booking agencies to try to get you to buy into my radio station. And then we looked at radio media planning, and that is simply put the science and art of knowing where, how, when to execute paid radio advertising elements on relevant radio stations. And we said that a media plan is a document put together by a client or by the client's specialist agency that looks at because it assumes that advertising is the solution to the client's marketing challenge, and it's necessary to purchase media space to reach the right target market for the client's marketing challenge. We looked at a media plan then in detail in terms of the channels, so whether it's radio or TV or social media or digital or other elements of digital or out of home. We spoke about media principles, and then all the other columns that go into a media planning sheet, so division, launch weight, subsequent weighting per week, so how many per week, the parameters, the time band, aka how long we're doing it for, and then is there an overlap, where is that overlap? And we said that you can have different types of messages, so a brand message or a retail message or an enterprise business unit, okay, so you can have all three of those. We spoke about the advantages and the disadvantages of radio, and we saw that the advantages by far outweighs the disadvantages of utilizing radio. Then we looked at how radio booking is done. We looked at the cost per thousand, or CPM, that M being French, so mille means thousand. And we said that the radio booking process involves the new radio plan that will get approved by the client, followed by the radio plan being sent to the stations, followed by the stations booking the spots and the campaign elements, and letting the radio media practitioners know if there are certain slots not available, with the radio media practitioners then confirming alternative booking slots and updating their media plan, after which the radio station will issue a contract to confirm all the spots and the amount of money to be paid. The media practitioners will then issue that flighting code that we spoke about. Okay, so the ad has a code, the flighting code will be issued, after which on a monthly basis the radio station will invoice the media practitioner, and the media practitioner will invoice the client, okay, and they pay 45 days after 45 days after invoicing. Then the media practitioner will compile a post-campaign report, and if there's any compensation needed, compensation will be spoken about here then with the station, okay, to see if there's any, if the station for some reason didn't play all the spots and needs to compensate the client, okay? And that is the radio media plan booking process. And in our previous lesson, we looked at the airtime sales team brand knowledge and developing relationships, where we explained how important it was to establish these relationships and to keep them. And we said that there are three major players in the radio airtime sales process, and those three are the client, the media agency, and the radio airtime sales team. So the client is the one who holds the budget for the radio advertising, and they are the ones who have a brand strategy to sell a product or a service. And from there, they will consult with their media agency, and the media agency manages the radio advertising budget on behalf of the client, and they negotiate the radio station rates, and they make the actual bookings with the station. And then from there, the media agency speaks to the radio airtime sales team, and they are the ones who generate revenue for the radio station. They have targets that they need to achieve in order to make commission, and they implement radio airtime bookings on air and online. Okay, so that's the three players in radio airtime sales. So depending on how big the client is, they'll most likely make use of this media agency that we just spoke about, and within them there are a few players. So there are media planners, buyers, strategists, and analysts, and if we group them together, we call them media practitioners. We looked at how a sales team can be broken up in terms of an organogram with the head of sales, then you get a national sales manager, then you get regional sales managers, then you get a direct sales team manager or a business unit manager. And then from there, you get the account executives or the sales assistants. Then we looked at brand knowledge. What is a brand? A brand is a thing that allows us to charge a certain price, so a premium, that consumers are willing to pay for a product or a service beyond what it will cost to create a product or to deliver that service, okay? So what it comes down to, so according to Valerie Geller, it's a collection of emotions and beliefs that come to mind if a person sees a radio station's logo or meets one of its personalities. And a radio station's brand is its promise to its listeners. It's what it's saying it will deliver on. If the station promises to be fun family station, then they can't have a lot of language on there that's inappropriate to children, okay, that kind of thing. We spoke about the assumption that radio stations that have the most listeners should be making the most advertising revenue. And we said that that assumption is often untrue. And we looked at an example in Next Level Radio to show us that this isn't always true. So how do radio stations with fewer listeners end up making more money? They have a sellable and an appealing brand. There's something about that specific radio station that appeals to radio stations and makes them willing and makes listeners or clients willing to spend more per set of ears for that station than for another. And that's your branding. Okay, so everything comes down to branding at the end of the day. Then we spoke about a few golden rules that a salesperson needs to have. The first of these are a salesperson needs to know their business, okay? A salesperson, secondly, needs to know the client's business through and through. A salesperson should be helpful. They should want to solve your problem. Then a salesperson should be able to be flexible and not rigid, so they should be able to move away from the idea that they have in terms of what you should be doing and fit to your mold. And if you have testimonials as a salesperson, you need to use them, okay? People trust more, especially if they've never used you, if they see your testimonials. And these rules contribute to the skill and art of developing relationships. Every person you meet might be worthwhile to add to your network. So it's always good to invest in potential clients and to try and build great relationships with them. They might not be interested in being your client right now, but they might someday be, or they might someday refer you to someone else, okay? So it's always important to look after your relationships. And then from there, we move into what we're looking at today, okay? Which I said is part 5 of buying, selling, and executing airtime, and we're looking specifically at commission and sales and programming, which starts on page 387 in Next Level Radio if you want to join. How much money they will get paid at the end of the month. Their salaries are enforced by a contract of employment, okay? So before you even start, you know how much you're going to make in a monthly time. You're going to make on a monthly basis. The volume and the quality of their work can vary from month to month, okay? But they will still get paid the same salary unless they are promoted or unless they're moved into another role. A salesperson is paid differently from a salaried individual, however. A salesperson is paid on commission. Each radio station has a different commission structure, but the principle of commission is that a salesperson is paid a percentage of the airtime sales that they close. This means that the more deals they close and the higher the value of those deals, the more they will earn. This incentivizes the sales team to chase their targets because their income is dependent on what they'll sell, and what they sell is determined by what their targets are. The basic guarantee is an amount of money made to cover expenses that the sales representative incurs, but nothing more than that. This is an amount of money they will secure regardless of what they sell in a month, and that will help them cover their monthly expenses if they hit a bad month and don't make any sales. Okay, so it might be enough to cover your rent, let's say, for instance. It tends to not really be higher than that. So if a radio sales executive is on a basic of 10,000 Rand a month and he earns 10% on any deals that he or she makes, then they could earn 10,000 Rand a month when they make no sales. Okay, so like I said, maybe it'll cover your rent. Or they can make up to 160,000 Rand or even higher. It depends on how much they bring in the month. If they close an advertising sales deal for 1.5 million Rand. So can you see the discrepancy there? So the amount that they could take home varies considerably. It's clearly in the best interest to close as many high value deals as possible. This means that the sales executive with bigger spending clients will make more money than those who are looking at smaller clients, okay? It's also easier for the sales executive to chase a single big client and make their target than it might be for them to chase a lot of smaller clients and manage all of their individual campaigns to make the same, if not less, money. The challenge of radio sales executives trying to acquire sufficient sales targets is one of those issues that fuels the sales and programming cultures, okay, which we're going to talk about now. When we look at sales versus programming, it can often feel like sales versus programming are working in opposition to one another in the radio business. This is because the sales and the programming teams have very different objectives. The immediate objective for the sales team is to reach their target for the day or for the week or for the month and bank the most money they can for the station. Of course, the sales team cares about the quality of the product also, but making that product the best it can be is not directly their job. But making that product the best it can possibly be is not their direct job. Their job is to bring in the money. The immediate objective, however, for the programming team is to make the best possible radio content they can, to make the audience as happy as possible, so that they listen more. They are also directly responsible for the quality of the product on the station, so they're directly responsible for the content. That's their core job. Sales and programming teams are also differently compensated, which results in them working very differently. Sales teams, as we've seen, can be paid on a commission structure. They're rewarded for making bigger sales, for reaching their targets, and for selling the types of airtimes that deliver more money per airtime unit for the station. They focus on the next sale and are playing a numbers game. This means that they are often looking for an immediate time horizon. So that is the estimated length of time for a goal or a target. They're looking at the days, they're looking at the weeks and the months, because this is how their sales targets are set out and how they will be compensated, so how they will be paid. Programming teams, though, are salaried or paid by the hour or by the show, so it works a little bit different. This means that no matter what sales are made, they know what money they'll get at the end of the month. This allows them to focus on making the best content possible. The measurement of their success is an improvement in the audience numbers. This means that they are looking at a longer term horizon, okay? Versus an immediate time horizon, which is what a sales team has. They're comparing the current year to the previous one and to the previous radio measurement diary. And they look at the next one coming up. They know what it takes. They know that it takes time to embed new content into the minds and the hearts of an audience through repetition and familiarity. Having said that, though, a successful radio station is always one that has a symbiotic relationship between the sales and the programming teams. It takes both sides of the whole to run. It takes both sides of the whole to run a radio station, sales and programming. When these two departments work hand in hand, the station will flourish. Both are concerned with meeting the needs of their customer. To the programmer, the customer is the listener. To the salesperson, the customer is the advertiser. Pleasing these two groups, the listener and the advertiser, should not be a mutual exclusive undertaking, okay? It's also important to acknowledge that clients are often listeners as well. The individuals who are spending their money on airtime are often doing so on the radio stations that they themselves are listening to. If they're not, then they're definitely listening when their advertising is being played on that station. And they can therefore become a new listener for the radio station. This means that clients are important to both programming and sales teams because they're both listeners and clients. So there are several ways that we can cultivate a symbiotic and mutually reliant and respectful culture between sales and programming. This is a task that's usually the responsibility of the station manager. Remember our first couple of classes, we looked at the station manager. This is part of his or her role. So let's look at a couple of these methods, okay? So there's leading from the top by example, systems and processes, co-presenting to clients, and then the skin in the game. The station manager exerts influence over the programming team and the sales team through their managers, who either report to the station manager or are on an equal footing with them. The station manager can therefore prioritize the importance of the sales and programming teams working closely together. can reward successful occasions of working together, and can provide supporting and resolving conflict between teams. A station manager should demonstrate the importance of the two teams working seamlessly and respectfully together by leading by example. In other words, a station manager should encourage a good flow of information between the two teams, thereby cultivating an environment for sales and programming to be interdependent. So who looks after the programming? The program manager. And who looks after the sales team? The sales manager. Okay. The next one there is system and processes. One way in which the sales and programming teams can be intrinsically linked is to set up a process whereby no team can implement a campaign without the other team's approval. Many station managers will set up a system whereby the sales team needs to get the approval or the buy-in from the programming team on a big idea before they can close the deal with the client. Most radio stations will have their programming teams approving copy for a live read and designing competitions and promotions for their sales team to get approval from clients purchasing those types of airtime packages. This means that the sales team can't sell something that the programming team is uncomfortable with executing. And then co-presenting to clients. If clients are often also listeners of the radio station, then they will have a listening relationship with many of the presenters and the personalities on air. This means that meeting those personalities would be of value to them, both from a personal and a professional point of view. Many radio stations will arrange presentations to clients where they will get the radio personalities to co-present. If a client is considering investing in a large-scale campaign with the station, they'll often feel a sense of comfort if the presenter who has to deliver the campaign is fully engaged with it and buys into how each and every element will work on their show. Skin in the game. Many commercial radio stations will offer on-air personalities and producers a share of commission on a big integrated deal if they can close it. This is usually the case of proactive selling, where the sales executive is trying to get a client to invest in something that isn't already part of the radio media plan. The idea here is to present a united front between the on-air team, the programming representatives, and the sales team to get the client to fall in love with the idea and purchase it, over and above any existing airtime commitments that they have already made to the station, or indeed to the radio advertising as a whole for that period. Some on-air presenters may be reluctant to engage in true station selling. A reason may be that they feel that it's not really their job to bring in money. The truth is that every person on air is selling the station every day. The content they produce is the product of the company they work for. The station's DJs and presenters are the ultimate frontline brand ambassador for the radio station's brand. So it's important for presenters to understand that delivering on-air advertising elements is not only part of their jobs, but can act as a counterweight to poor audience numbers. When clients purchase airtime for a particular show, they are not only buying the audiences listening in that time slot, they're buying the presenter that is serving the needs of that audience in that time slot. Clients regularly purchase time slots because they are delivered by a particular presenter. This could be for reasons such as the brand fit between their product and the service that such as a brand fit between their product or service and that presenter, or because that presenter specifically executes competitions and engagements with callers really well, and the mechanic that the campaign needs requires that level of experience and care. There are several DJs or hosts that are greatly valued by clients who rely on them to deliver their advertising messages in an engaging and a real way. I want us to look at an example, example 10B on page 390 in Next Level Radio. Okay, so example 10B, it starts off there with how a petrolhead presenter won clients for 5FM. Former 5FM DJ Sasha Martinengo, and he is now on Hot 919, was well known among audiences for being a petrolhead. He loves his car and Formula One motoring extended. He loves his cars and Formula One motoring extended across all aspects of his career. Sasha created car features on his radio show, wrote columns for motoring magazines, and hosted Supersport's F1 broadcasts for more than 20 years. Sasha was a favorite master of ceremonies, so an MC, at car events attended by thousands of South Africans, including the Joburg International Motoring Show and Top Gear, alongside internationally acclaimed TV presenters Richard Hammond and Jeremy Clarkson. His personal collection of Ferrari memorabilia was featured in both magazines and on TV shows such as Top Billing. Through his deep-seated passion for cars, Sasha attracted a number of new clients for 5FM. It was because of Sasha's credibility as a car enthusiast and F1 commentator that clients such as Alfa Romeo and Car Magazine began advertising on the station. Sasha would regularly attend the same events as car dealership bosses and automotive industry brand managers. He would DJ and MC at annual car shows and year-end functions for the biggest car brands in South Africa. This allowed him to provide introductions between the 5FM sales team and car brands and related businesses that had advertising budgets to utilize. Car experts and industry professionals trusted him with their brands at events, and this led to them trusting him with their brands on his radio show. Sasha was personally involved in closing several sponsorship and advertising deals on his show. He worked side by side with the 5FM sales team to convince new clients, many of whom had never utilized radio as an advertising platform before, to spend their money with him. At the time, 5FM did not offer any type of skin the game structure that would reward on-air talent for closing a sales deal. But Sasha believed that part of his job was to show the station management team that his content was commercially viable. A client had a difficult job to do trying to sell their product to an audience in a 30-second advertising spot. If they're working with a professional who already understands and uses their product, and even better, has an appreciation and affinity for it, then half of the job is done. For the car clients Sasha met, advertising through him meant they could stamp his credibility on their products. If he supported their brands, so did his listeners. Sasha spent more than 19 years on 5FM, one of the longest careers in the history at the station. He started on a graveyard shift, which means the late hours of the evening or very early mornings, and rose to celebrate more than 5,000 shows before he left the station in 2012. He has been described by those who worked with him as a consummate professional who would do anything for the station and to whom no job was too small or too much to ask. This reputation was fundamental to his career, to his long career at a youth-centric radio station, and his subsequent broadcast career across numerous TV, radio, and internet platforms. Okay, so we're going to end it off there for today. At the end of the day, you need to do what's what's best for the station, which means what's best for the listener, but also what's best for the client, because you need to have money coming in and you need to keep listeners and bring in more listeners. And with that, I say goodbye until next time, where we are starting to look at design thinking in detail. So we're going back to storytelling and seeing how we should be putting everything together. Okay, so with that, I say goodbye for now until next time. Bye.